Okay, so welcome everybody, and I want to just again thank everybody for coming out tonight. And Phil Hunsberger asked us to try to put together something, and I think Lenny put the bug in his ear about it, and we said yes, we'll do something, and we actually put Phil off by a month, and then so we committed to October, and even committing to October, we had to hustle our fannies off in the last 2 weeks in order to pull off this presentation, and collecting photos that were not our photos, and then coming up with a narrative against it. So we're gonna try to keep you entertained, keep everybody awake, and spend enough time on this so you appreciate what we did and where we went without keeping you here too late. Okay. So let's see, let me just start here. Let me get my technology in order here. So, okay, so we were with a trip sponsored by Keystone Trails Association. And, okay.
Turn on.
Oh, that might help. No, that's off. All right, that would help. Hold on. Ah, now I have it on.
No.
There we go. Good.
Hey.
Okay, so Keystone Trails Association. About a year ago, we didn't know an awful lot about them, but they're very active around the state in trail projects and caring for trails, maintaining trails, building trails, being an advocate for trails, and they are primarily centered in central Pennsylvania, but actually they reach out to all corners of the state, and they are quite established, and most importantly, Delaware Valley, AMC Delaware Valley chapter has an official relationship with Keystone Trails Association. So we are in a partnership with them. We help them, they help us, and they are really good people. And as we learned, they occasionally, a couple times a year, it seems, sponsor hiking oriented and outdoor oriented trips to interesting places. So that is who they are. And to talk about how much work that they do locally, they are actually the trail maintainers of the Appalachian Trail from Lehigh Furnace Gap through the Outer Bridge Shelter, through Lehigh Gap, back up the mountain to Little Gap, and I believe that is about an 11-mile stretch of the Appalachian Trail. So that is their responsibility. So we got onto this trip in July, and the earlier slide talked about it being a hiking trip to the west coast of Newfoundland, and here is the west coast of Newfoundland, and we would also eventually get up to the northern peninsula of Newfoundland. And before I get into the specifics of that trip, anybody have anything they'd like to share, any nuggets of knowledge about Newfoundland that they would just like to talk about, mention? Nuggets of knowledge.
It's actually pronounced Newfoundland.
We're going to talk
Newfoundland. I'm sorry.
We're going to get to that.
Newfoundland.
We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that very controversial topic. Okay. All right. Thank you. That is one important feature of Newfoundland. Any other nuggets of knowledge? Anybody know anything about Newfoundland? Anything? What have you heard about Newfoundland? Anybody been to Newfoundland? They've been there.
It's been 10 years
This is the.
since we were there.
All right,
Flying gate and watching icebergs.
all right, okay.
Acres Away is a very entertaining group, but we were there 10 years ago, so I don't know if they are still with us.
All right. Okay. All right, well then, let me, and any other nuggets of knowledge? If not, I'm gonna move on, because I'm gonna give you a few of my own.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right, so, but, yeah, and also, just one thing to remember about Newfoundland, is what you're gonna see tonight in this presentation just begins to scratch the surface of the culture of Newfoundland and what is, and the land that is there. I'm reading a book called Theater of Fish, and it's a very good book. And a quotation from the back cover of that book: Newfoundland is one of the most intriguing places in North America, a land of breathtaking but cruel beauty, populated by some of the saltiest, oddest characters you'll ever find.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a bit of a quirky place, and the people are a little quirky, but they're good people. All right, some fun facts. Okay, so Newfoundland, just the island, the fourth largest island in Canada, the 16th largest in the world. The other larger islands in Canada, I believe, are in the high Arctic. It is slightly larger, again, just the island, slightly larger than Kentucky, or about 5 times the size of New Jersey. Incredibly, Newfoundland did not enter Canada until 1949. It had been previous to that, it had been a British colony. Now, Labrador, this amazing place up here to the northwest, had long been administered as a territorial stepchild to Newfoundland. And in 1981, Newfoundland and Labrador, though, were formally conjoined under the provincial name of Newfoundland and Labrador. So that is the official province name. Now, the Labrador part contains 73% of the land of the province, but only 5% of the population. So it is very, very sparsely populated. Newfoundland, another quirky thing, has its own time zone. Okay, and the extra weird thing about the time zone is it's a 30-minute difference. So it is 30 minutes later here than it is even in Nova Scotia or Prince Edward Island. And it is therefore 90 minutes time difference between St. John's and anywhere on the East Coast US. Okay. All right, so the full province, population 530,000, which is 150,000 less than the combined populations of Lehigh and Northampton counties. Or it's about 50,000 less than the least populated state, which is Wyoming. So it's, and when you combine Newfoundland and Labrador, there are only 3 states in the US larger: Alaska, Texas, and California. Newfoundland has 1 city the size of Allentown, the capital is St. John's. It has maybe 4 others that are around the size of Easton. And the town that we visited and flew in and out of, Deer Lake, which is about down here, about the size of Lehighton or Palmerton. So not a lot of big towns. You missed all this one with my asking for nuggets of knowledge. Jim, Vikings.
Yes.
Vikings, all right, I'll talk about
We
that.
didn't quite get to the that part. The other big bit of knowledge I was going to say is in Gros Morne National Park was where they found evidence of a continental shift, because it's the only other place, there's only a couple places in the world where the Earth's mantle comes up out of the earth, and it looks like Mars' surface. It's all red and dead because of heavy metals. But it's actually married up with parts of Africa. Yeah, up till then, I forget the scientist's name.
Now, Jim knows 50 times more than this than I do, but I am going to talk about that
Yeah.
in a very little bit. But the only archaeological confirmed Viking site, occupation site in North America is up here at Meadows, which our trip will visit, and I'll talk about a little more later on.
I did have one question, Will. Did they correct the pronunciation of Viking when you were there? I'm just curious.
I think they were using Norse.
Because I think they call them Viking.
In Europe.
If they have that
They
one,
didn't do that.
that went
Nobody
over my
said
head
that
if they
to
have.
me.
Okay, so it was a Norse post for trade with the indigenous people, estimated to have lasted about a decade, dating, the year that they dated is about 1021. So unlike what we were taught in school, then Columbus did not discover America, he merely plundered the Caribbean.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so I talked about the mountain range. It's an extension of our Appalachians. It climbs, the mountain will be on climbs to 2,655 feet, which sounds a little modest, but it's the second highest point in the island. The pronunciation of what I'm calling Newfoundland is debatable. Other common pronunciations, Newfoundland, Newfoundland. The French translation is Terra Nova, the Portuguese is Terra Nova, and others just call it the Rock. All right. So also a couple of other perspectives on it. It's relatively close to where the Titanic sunk, about 400 miles off the southeast coast. The first transatlantic telegraph cable line terminated just north of St. John's in a place called Trinity Bay, right here. And I'm surprised nobody said this. During 9/11, many transatlantic flights were forced to land at Gander, up in this area, and they got a warm welcome from the local people, and became the basis for a popular Broadway show called Come From Away. Okay, one more thing, or two more things. You can drive there from here, but you probably don't want to. Okay, unlike Jim and Lynn, you probably don't want to. Bethlehem to the Viking settlement site at Meadows is 1,600 miles plus a 5-hour ferry ride. That's like driving to Amarillo, Texas. All right, so maybe you want to think twice about that, unless you have like a great travel trailer, like or travel system like Lynn and Jim.
No, we can sign on XB.
Do they speak English? Yes, with local dialects and a vocabulary strongly influenced by Celtic, Indigenous, Portuguese, and Acadian French. And to this question, which I don't have the answer, and I'm not even asked Jim if he knows the answer, is there a connection between the breeds of dogs, Labrador and Newfie, to the actual Labrador and Newfoundland? I don't know, so please don't answer.
And something written in literature about that the Labradors really came from Finland, and the Newfies came from Labrador.
Oh, wow.
There's something in the literature that I read, somebody mentioned it in talk one time, that why they called the dogs wrong name, but I don't.
Okay, next image. Deer Lake is where we flew in and out of. It put us within about a 45-minute drive of Gros Morne National Park, which is here, and we're going to spend 5 days in Gros Morne National Park, and along here is the Trans-Canada Highway, which runs from Vancouver in the west to St. John's in the east over here. Very long road. So at 697,000 acres, Gros Morne is a bit smaller than Lehigh and Northampton counties combined. It was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. If anybody wants to ask about UNESCO, we can talk about that a little later on. Because of its exceptional beauty and because it protects geological formations that represent outstanding examples of the major stages in the Earth's evolution, which is some of what Jim was talking about, and we're going to talk about a little bit more. But for us, for Terry and I, the park just felt spectacularly varied, stunning mountains, rugged coastlines, arid valleys, bays, fjords, massive ponds. The giant uplift that Jim was talking about is known as the Tablelands, that appears to me to be straight out of the American West of the old cowboy movies. Looks very out of place. And it's just absolutely quiet. The only thing you hear is the wind rustling. One friend had described Gros Morne as Acadia National Park on steroids. I don't know if that was Jim, maybe it was. But more properly, I would say Acadia is Gros Morne in miniature. Did I say that right?
There you go.
All right. Okay. Next visual, all right, well, that was our departure day. We flew Philadelphia to Montreal to Deer Lake, Newfoundland, and we stayed in a place called the Deer Lake Motel, which is actually nicer than it sounds. All right, so our arrival, okay, airport maybe half the size of Lehigh Valley International, regional service throughout the Maritimes and connections to Montreal and Toronto. We were sweltering at home in the mid-90s at that time. It was warm there as well. Now, warm by their standards is upper 70s to mid 80s, and that's what we had for most of the trip. And I think we were a bit naive to think that we would be needing as many sweaters and jackets as we packed, and we probably regretted some of those packing decisions. So it was pretty warm. It felt okay compared to what we were coming from, but it was still pretty warm. And there, okay, we have arrived at the Deer Lake Motel. And if I can find my notes here. Yes, okay. So Terry and I were on this trip, and we had never done any group destination travel other than some AMC stuff with people we know. So we didn't know a lot of people. We knew maybe one person on the trip. So getting to the hotel lounge and for happy hour was a great icebreaker for all of us, and we were able to relax and start to get to know people. And in time, we would form a cohesive bonds with everybody and make some lasting friendships. It was a nice place, hotel. We would stay there at the end of our trip as well. Had a restaurant, and also it put us close to Gros Morne. So somebody asked earlier, how did we get on the trip? And Terry has spotted a notification one day last winter about on the KTA website about a trip to Newfoundland. And about a second later, I said, sure. I'd wanted to go to Newfoundland since I learned about 60 years ago that the Vikings, in National Geographic, that the Vikings had been there. And I'd been to 8 of the 10 Canadian provinces, but never Newfoundland. So I said, let's do it. And we proceeded from there. There were 14 spots. We had to apply to get in. 55 applied, 14 were accepted. And then we had to go through, we were lucky, we got accepted. And then we had to go through a vetting process that asked questions about our hiking fitness and our health, and we were approved. And we were very thrilled about the idea of going, but we were cautioned by a wise Canadian AMCer that Gros Morne is a doozy of a hike. And so you better get your butts in shape if you plan to do that. So it was with a little bit of fear in our veins that we sent in our down payment. So next day, we're now going to Gros Morne National Park for a relatively easy hike. And here we are again. So we went from lounge lizards to hikers. with our arrival here, and we would move around the park and the province under the care of this gentleman named Francois, who's a local guy, and he was our driver for our 21 passenger bus, and he turned out to be a great friend and full part of our group. So we're headed up to Lookout Mountain, which I think is somewhere behind us. That's also this is Paul Shaw. He's our trip leader from KTA. So a nice trail system up there, steady 1,200-foot climb, so just a good introductory hike, but also a little bit of honest sweat on our first day there. And then we got up and like, oh, all right, so we had our first moment. Like, so this is a couple things interesting on this image. Apparently Parks Canada, a feature of Parks Canada is the red Adirondack chairs, and you see those in quite a few places here and around the Parks Canada system. So we are overlooking an arm of the sea that comes out of the sea over here, but it's called Bond Bay, not Bombay, but Bone Bay, Bone Bay. And there are some scattered villages along here. We will stay 2 nights over here, a place called Woody Point, and we will spend 3 nights over in here somewhere, a place called Rocky Harbor. A good start. And we're going to continue uphill a bit more to Lookout Mountain. And then this is your first look at the tablelands, which I'll be talking more about. And we're going to get up close and personal with the tablelands in a couple of days. Okay, next day we had a very different hike. This is to a place called Green Gardens. And so let me get the next one. Good save. Okay, so Terry and I were, one of our concerns was how was our own hiking abilities going to mesh with KTA people, and as it turned out, we were on about par. Paul Shaw, the trip leader, he was good at sizing up people and offering harder or easier options. It turned out that also we were of a similar demographic to who we find in a lot of AMC activities, outdoor enthusiasts of a certain age, attracted to travel that exposes you to great things and makes you sweat for your rewards, but leaves you a little bit of energy and hours energy to enjoy local sites after your hiking activities. So Terry and I felt like we were a really good fit for the trip and for the group. So we would, it was a stunner, not a particularly long hike today, but it was a stunner, and we had some low hills, which we just saw in the previous slide. We passed some waterfalls, and now we'll eventually arrive at a terrace overlooking the sea, which is shown here, and is actually a part of the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And we're going to see in a moment some cool boulders and something called sea stacks. And at the terrace level, also we're going to see some wildflower meadows that was hence the name Green Gardens came from. So we're overlooking the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Another view from the terrace looking down to the beach. One of your boulders is shown here. Yes, and the Green Gardens are these lovely growths of wildflowers above this is on a bluff above the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and then there's a another good view. You're seeing the gardens. I'll go back to that one. I'm looking at a little bit of your green gardens up here. Here's your bluff or your cliff. One of the many rock formations along there. And we proceeded finally to this stairway leading down to this amazing beach where which was a good spot for lunch. And now we are going to staying in the park. We have a hike the next day this is going to finally get us into the tablelands area. But we're going to call it, we first will be going along a body of water called Trout River Pond. And in Newfoundland, ponds can be massive inland waterways. So don't be surprised when you see what you see. And so the trail out there was kind of nasty, up and down, rough vegetation. We're kind of along the pond, although you can't see the shoreline here. There you are. All right, so this is Trout River Pond. I believe that this goes in about 10 miles. And the actual tablelands, I'm not sure I'm not positive that that's part of it. We've got another part of it over here, which we're going to get up close to soon. So there we are. Okay, that is what we've been calling the tablelands. Is this uplift behind us?
I guess some of these ponds were actually some of the few in the world that were fjords that have been closed off at the mouth through centuries of
Yes.
debris and stuff.
Yeah, and
most fjords go right out to the sea.
and geological change has closed them off, and we're going to have we're going to get to another one a little later on that'll also pop your eyes a bit. So now this gives you a better idea of climbing into this area that is known as the tablelands, and we're on a trail that's going to go out into here. The pond we were talking about is now down in here. Okay, so following the pond, we're moving away. This little semi-closed off area, but it's not. It is open, but it's called they call that the Narrows. The sea is out here. We're actually very close to the coastline here, but you cannot necessarily tell that. All right, so if you see now, notice how the reddish rocks and the aridity of the area. I mean, you know, the way I would describe it is that it felt with the aridity, and also it was getting quite warm at this point. It felt like you were in Nevada or Utah rather than the far northeast of North America. So it was very, very different kind of place for us. You see more of that just how warm and arid the area is. You're farther inland now. Here's your pond. You're still not to the end of the pond. We're not going to get that far in, but that is what they call the Trout River Pond. The sea being out in this direction. We're now on our return. So finally, we moved over to a different lodging, and this is the village of Rocky Harbor. So I want to talk about that. the history of that a little bit, and that let me just go back though for just a moment. I want to say one more thing about the tablelands. Oh, shoot, hold on. All right, so a little more about the tablelands, and they look wildly out of place because through geological forces millions of years ago, this massive rock from beneath the surface of the earth was lifted and left behind here. It's one of the few places on the planet where you can see evidence of what's below the crust of the earth on the earth's surface. It's quite an amazing sight. All right. So we're in the village of Rocky Harbor, and I want to talk about that a bit. And historically, on the coastline of Newfoundland, where most of the population lives, there were hundreds of scattered communities anchored by the fishing industry, and especially before the development of the road network in Newfoundland, these villages were known more so then than now as outports. And they tended to be from a few dozen people to a few hundred people, entirely dependent on fishing and water transport, and extremely isolated. Now the fishing remains important today. It's changed some, but it remains important. And nearly all the outports are connected to the rest of the island by roads. And prior to the establishment of Gros Morne National Park in 1973, 3 villages close by to us, Woody Point, Rocky Harbor, which we're looking at here, and another village called Trout River, they would have been classic outports. Today, the connections and the proximity of Gros Morne have infused them with enough tourist dollars, and they're actually quite modern and relatively prosperous. So we will be 3 nights in the village of Rocky Harbor. And so after 3 days of quite challenging hikes, we needed some recuperation. And our first of 3 nights was in Rocky Harbor, about 700 residents in Rocky Harbor, bustling tourist trade there. So we hit the bar for some food, drink, song, and dance. And they call it in Newfoundland a kitchen party. Terry's going to tell you more about that.
So I just want to let everybody know that this kitchen party and the Screech event was not part of the itinerary, okay? So there was a gentleman on our trip who had been to Newfoundland previously, and he's the one who said, we have to go and be screeched. And it's like, what the heck is being screeched all about? Well, first of all, screech is a rum. And so basically it's when you are screeched, you drink a shot of rum, screech rum, and you kiss a cod. And then you become an honorary Newfoundlander. And so this whole process was part of this kitchen party event. And so leading up to the screech part of the event, there was an entertainer, there was a guy playing guitar, we had sing-alongs, and it just so happens that let's see, we have the pointer here. Oh, turn it back. Okay, so we had Wells leading the way. We were singing the Country Roads Take Me Home.
Oh, okay.
What, to the place I belong, West Virginia. It's like West Virginia. This gentleman here, some of you might know him. He is an AMC DV chapter member and a leader out Charis. So he was the only person that we actually knew going into this trip. And some of the other, this is Gail. She was part of our travel group. There's me. These 2 people, I have no idea who they were. Just people. This was a party open to anybody, and people just could get up and start singing. And it was. They had instruments, like local instruments. People were able to play, and it was just a heck of a lot of fun. And I think we paid like $15 a piece to participate. It was, so it kind of like led the way. So oops, wrong one here. Let me see, what's this? There we go. Okay, so the screech party. So this is open to anybody, and basically it's for tourists, okay? So we ended up paying $10 to be screeched. And this gentleman here with the microphone is the person who runs the program. And you take an oath, and it's just the most bizarre oath. This is, so I'll read you the oath. So it says, I, and you say your name, I, Terry Oravec, being only 3/4 in me right mind, do swear upon me soul to uphold the charter of honorary Newfoundlanders, to drink screech regularly every Sunday for a fortnight, and to honor and respect me codfathers and me codmothers to the day I dies. So help me Lord. So then we became the Royal Order of Screechers, and we all had to kiss a cod, dance a jig, consume Newfie screech, and we were then hereby sworn in as Screeched in Newfoundland. And so now you have to, when we first heard about kissing a cod, I'm thinking, nah, I don't think I want to do this. I asked Wells, what do you think? I don't know. I don't think we want to do this. But everybody kind of got on board, and it's like, you know what, this is going to be fun. What the heck, why not? When in Newfoundland, do as the tourists do, yes. So the more interesting thing is Wells does not eat seafood. And so the idea of him kissing a cod on the lips, that was the other thing we were told, you're supposed to kiss the cod on the lips. It's like, nah, I don't think I can do this, but we did. He was frozen. However, turns out COVID kind of saved us, because they used to actually bring out a big cod, and so everybody, and then the person who was leading the program took the cod, and everybody actually had to kiss the cod on the lips. But because of COVID, they stopped doing it that way. So everybody was handed a little plastic baggie with I want to call it, what was the cod? It was like it looked like a baby cod. It was salted. It was a salted fish. And you could eat it, by the way, because I saw some people doing that. But we were standing in this circle, and there's people from all over the place who were at the bar. And this guy here, Dave Bailey, I'll call him, he's the instigator. He's the one who said, we have to be screeched. And so we did. And it was a heck of a lot of fun. And this particular image here was captured by one of our hiker friends. And I am drinking, but I do not do shots very well. So this is me trying to chug back the screech rum, which was kind of like, I don't know if I can get this down in one gulp, and I couldn't. I ended up having to do like 3 times. And then, but this is Wells, that's actually this little baby fish that he actually put his lips to it.
When they're there, do it,
So it was a lot of fun. But I did see people actually eating their cod, their little fish or whatever it was. It's like, no, thank you. I don't think I can do it. But we came home with our little certificates that said we were honorary Newfoundlanders now.
Terry's very proud of that. by the
I
way.
am. Wells didn't want to do that part of the presentation. I said, why not? This is the fun part,
In Gaelic, they call it caving. Kitchen parties are caving.
Oh, are they? Okay.
All right, we still have a couple more days in Gros Morne National Park. Paul is a smart guy, and to prepare for our big hike after today, after July 12th, he scheduled an easier 6-mile round trip to a waterfall known as Baker's Brook Falls. And after some tough travel and some warm weather hiking and partying and moving luggage in and out of 3 different lodgings. It was time to chill. And as with any group travel experience, there are high energy and low energy days. So an easy hike to the still very photogenic waterfall was exactly what we needed. Baker Brook Falls. That's Al, our friend Al Chapacharis. All right, now, so what's with the fence? Well, from an imported population of a few animals for hunting 100 years ago, the moose population of Newfoundland has grown to several hundred thousand. In addition to causing havoc and death along the highways, the moose are big eaters. Some of us, same as the way we use fencing down here to revegetate acreage that's been decimated by deer. Here, Parks Canada has set up a fence to help revegetate moose trashed lands. But in our travels up there, we never saw a moose in the wild, and we only had 3 sightings from the safety of our bus. Finally, now we're going to get to the big climb. And it was early in the morning, and notice, some of us at least, trepidation on the face. All right, there's a good example of that, and maybe this guy too. Over here. So it wasn't really a fear of the length of the hike or the wicked rock scramble, which we're going to see in a minute. It was from the ongoing, the hot and humid weather that we really hadn't anticipated, but thankfully we prioritized good hydration. And as we did gain height, we lost a little bit of temperature and picked up a breeze. So it was, thankfully, it was more tolerable than we anticipated it might be. It's 2,655 feet above sea level at the summit. So it's not a giant of a mountain, even, like by the standards of the Catskills. But it starts the elevation, the climb starts close to sea level. And it's got a very nasty rock scramble. Whoops, hold on. Messing this up. So it's got a very nasty rock scramble that we've highlighted that actually starts like right in here and goes up in here, and does a little thing here and comes up to the summit here. So we had to be respectful of the difficulty. And so 10 of our 14 in our party ascended to the summit. 4 others turned back before it got too serious. So what we encountered, and this sent some chills up some spines, I think were these. Okay, so this is really where the serious part of your climb begins at these two signs. Time to reassess. And but also, know that, and we'll see this a little bit, because of the difficulty of the mountain and because of its reputation with the rock scramble, it is kind of a Canadian peak bagger kind of place. So there's it's a popular hike. Think of New Jersey's Mount Mincy times 5 with no Interstate 80 below. So the scramble up that I'll show you in a second was shared by dozens of hikers, mostly younger than us, whose ease and speed made us quite aware that they were not suffering as we might have been. All right, so we got, this is our leader, Paul Shaw, kind of bringing up the rear for us. Okay, a little more rock scramble. This is, I think it is moderated a little bit at this point. This is about 7/10 the way up there, but you can see there's a lot of activity up there. on the mountain. We made it. Of course we made it, or else Terry and I wouldn't be here doing this presentation. We would. So we were very happy, of course. Oops. Hold on. We were very happy, of course, and those are smiles. They are genuine. They are of satisfaction and relief. And so we're all pretty happy about getting the hardest part of the trip out of the way on this successful summit. So as we're going to start to come down now, and we're all very happy. Of course, we've been successful. The scenery is stunning. The temperatures are now cooler, but eventually we would suffer again. But for the moment, though, let's enjoy the scenery. We're just off the summit at this point.
Is this a different route back down?
It is a different route. Good question. It is. They take you up one way. You go up. You go up in a single direction up the scramble, and then the route loops you around. So what you repeat, Paul, is the first 4K and the final 4K. And the rest of it is a loop. Okay, so that is called 10 Mile Pond. Okay, one of the cutoff fjords.
They have a great tourist boat right now.
Yes. So we saw this on our way down. We're coming down a little bit more. I can't identify what those bodies are. I think that this is part of Bombay, over near closer to the coast. We're still having a pretty good time on the way down. Still having a pretty good time. We hit the stairway. Okay, so we were in good spirits, and then we hit the stairway. And when we got to the bottom of the stairway, I think I'm calling it the Valley of Death. We entered. Okay, it was about a 3K slog of ups and downs and rough footing and very little shade, just as our water supplies were going dry. And we were getting mighty tired and ornery. I think all hikers know that feeling, and therefore we would mostly suffer in silence on the long march back to the trailhead. So the fun after the stairway, that was the end of the fun, but we still had probably like 2.5 or 3 hours left of the hike back. So, in the end, we would tally, it was 17 to 18 kilometers or around 11 miles, about 3,000 feet of net elevation gain, and 8 to 9 hours of elapsed time. The great guy that Francois, our leader, he met us sojourners at the trailhead with a cooler of adult beverages. Good guy. All right, so now we're sort of on the second half of the trip, the downside. Lynn, you can keep your eyes open for a few more minutes. We're getting there. I'm just going. So Paul, again, the guy knows what he's doing, and so he scheduled an easy day after a hard day. Okay, so we are going to do the most touristy thing you can do in the park, but it's still really cool up here. Really cool up here. So Parks Canada makes you do a road walk about 2 miles out to a tour boat. Okay, we're going on a tour boat. So we arrive at the tour boat, and there's a landing there with a restaurant and ice cream and souvenirs. And all that good touristy stuff aside, it is actually an awesome activity. Okay, and it takes you deep into what Jim talked about earlier, up a waterway that had been in earlier geological times an actual fjord that has been cut off from the sea, and it was just stunning. So I am not, the photos we have really can't capture what we saw, so I'm just going to let you look at them, and I'm not going to say too much, but just enjoy the scenery for the next few shots.
How deep is the pond?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
Google that.
Been going down by Croatia, so
10 miles.
it's very.
Look at that rebel.
That's my favorite picture of Terry and I.
Stephen, yes, ma'am?
Okay, it was a boat full of tourists too, so, but we did a pretty good job keeping them out of our way. It was actually quite a crowded boat, but it was great. It was great.
And how long the ride was it, like time wise?
2 hours? Yeah. Yeah, as I said, I think probably the most touristy activity in the park, but it was just it was like one that was worth doing.
And at the far end, now hikers that are doing,
Ah.
overnight backpacking.
Yes,
stuff,
okay, we
take
didn't,
this out to the far end.
yeah, we didn't put that slide in there, but we saw that, and hikers do have the option of riding in one way and spending several days backpacking out. And we saw this one
It's a family.
man and woman and 2 young children doing exactly that. So it was an exciting thing to see. All right, so finally, we are now leaving Gros Morne National Park, and we are going to head up north. So we did stop at this one sea stack at a place called Arches Provincial Park. And we are now going to go up the coastline. I'm going to show you this on a map in a moment. Up the coastline, and we are going to go to the Viking site at Meadows and a lightkeeper's house on an island farther north. So we are now, we had been down in here, we were coming up the coast. We stayed a night right around here in an old a schoolhouse has been converted into a lodge. It wasn't bad. And right here is where if you're going to Labrador, you take a ferry over to here, which actually is on the Quebec side of that border. And then Labrador begins up in here. We did not do that. Instead, we went up the coastline. Okay, up the coastline. And up the coastline, for those of you who have read the shipping news, I believe, is set up in this area in the 90s, maybe the 80s. And it was as remote and lonely as the novel depicted. It was really quite interesting and quite amazing to see. But we came up and then we followed this highway, which takes you over the last of the Appalachians or the Long Range, and we're going to head eventually up into this area, which I'm going to get to in the next slide.
So does the International Appalachian Trail go up there?
No, I think it ends at the St. Lawrence River. I think it ends at the St. Lawrence River.
No, we had a friend that played it. He was at the ferry.
I don't know.
Nova Scotia comes down southeast of, southwest of
Does it? Okay.
it's also the Brooks, I was where you went, Brunswick,
Okay.
Edward Island, and Nova Scotia. That's
The International.
southwest of.
So I wanted to say, before we get to our final stopover point, that what Terry and I paid to go on this trip, part of it, about a quarter of it, included an actual contribution to the Keystone Trails Association, which we were very happy to pay with what when we saw the work that they do. But our price included airfare, the bus, park passes, most meals, and all lodging. And we were housed in modern cabins or hotel rooms throughout our trip with private baths. And even in areas with Spartan visitor amenities like the far north, we were exceptionally comfortable and viewed we really viewed what we paid for with what we got from the trip as a bargain. And, the one thing that we did suffer with a bit was a lack of good coffee.
But you got to kiss the cop.
Yeah, I guess. So finally, we've come up here and we're in the far northern part of Newfoundland proper and Meadows National Historic Site. This is where the Vikings or the Norse were. I'll talk about that in just a second. And then we will leave there. We will get on a Zodiac boat and zip our way up, and we will stay 2 nights in the Quirpon Island, Quirpon Lighthouse Inn in the old lightkeeper's house. So when you arrive at Meadows, it doesn't, I'll be honest, it doesn't blow you away, but because it's just a forlorn place along a rocky coastline. But there's this very cool artwork that depicts the arrival of the Norse people there. And there is this is actually the actual archaeological site of the post that was there. And this is a replica of it. They have the actual site, but they have a replica, and inside the replica is a cave-like dwelling, and they have reenactors in there. And it's just a kind of a lonely place along the coastline. But what I think makes the whole thing so incredible is the story that they tell you in the park office about what's there. And the importance, and it was the location's importance in the context of global civilization. And it's an incredible story about the coming together of far-flung civilization, or far-flung peoples to form this global civilization around the year approximately 1021. And that's what sold the place for me. It was okay. The rest of it was okay. It was worth going to, but the story of it is just flabbergasting. So same as Gros Morne, Meadows is a UNESCO World Heritage Site for its importance in human history. So this stuff is called tuckamore. Okay, so the tree is what locals they call it tuckamore. And it's not a specific species. Just ignore that. I don't care what it is. It's my phone. It's not a specific species, but rather it's a spruce that's been a stunted spruce that's been turned and twisted by the wind and the environmental conditions. It only grows a few feet, and you can find it in all over not important. I mean important, but all over Newfoundland, and where no other trees grow, you can still find tuckamore. So it's pretty cool. All right.
Those cones are blue. Is that what I'm seeing?
They're like grayish blue, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Those are the pine cones?
Yeah, I guess so.
Huh.
Okay, so we're going out to Quirpon Island for 2 nights. We're riding on a Zodiac. The captain had to make a couple trips to get us all out there. It was kind of thrilling. Quirpon Island is about 4 to 5 miles in length, and it is the very, very northern point of land in Newfoundland proper. So we have arrived, and apparently this place was an Allied surveillance post during World War II. And some travel author, some travel magazine writer has claimed that the lightkeeper's house here is to be among the world's 5 harshest and remote places to stay. Okay, so our Zodiac driver, Captain Ed, purchased the island from the Canadian Coast Guard and opened the lightkeeper's house as an inn. And the lighthouse itself, as I told somebody earlier, was in active service until 1996. So we are coming, this is the boathouse, and then we walk on this road or path, maybe a half a mile up to where the lodging part is and where the actual light station is. So it's called Cape Bowd and is kind of famous in Newfoundland history. That is actually like on the base of the, or building next to the lighthouse, I think. All right, so there's your lighthouse. Locked up, we could not get in. This building here, I don't know what it originally was, but it is used as kind of an observation for guests who want to sit out there and possibly catch icebergs or whales going by.
Which there
We
were
did
no-
not see any
no
icebergs.
icebergs.
We did see, was identified as orcas, which I think is the way. So the next day, again, we were socked in with some rain and wind, but there are trails out there. We did some hiking. Terry and I actually did even more hiking because it was just cool to be up there, cool to be out there. Okay, there's our friend Paul Shaw again leading the way. And it takes you to some very interesting places like that. And so here you get a better view. This is your lighthouse through the fog. And this is your lightkeeper's residence, which is where most of our group stayed on the island. And we're out here hitting some of the trails.
Where did the others stay? Well.
There was a second building
Oh,
that was almost right next to ours, yeah. Good question, Lynn. And so some of the other trails just take you to these very, very interesting places. There's a shot of the lightkeeper's house where most of us stayed in, where all of our meals were served. One of the 5 harshest and most remote places to stay in the world, according to some. Our dining facility. And certainly, it was a wild and lonely place up there, but hospitality absolutely flourished, as you can see by our group getting together for conversation and drinks and memories of a trip that we're not likely to forget. Fed well by the staff there, the kitchen staff. And then, folks, all great things must end. We're gonna go home soon. We got a long day, Quirpon Island, returning to Deer Lake. And so there's Terry and Ellen and Terry on the Zodiac on the ride back. That's Captain Ed there at the helm.
I just want to make one quick mention. You'll notice that Zodiac is not very wide, doesn't have a lot of space for luggage. So what we had to do was we had to take clothing out of our luggage, and we were given plastic bags to put our clothing in. And then all those plastic bags were stored underneath in those lockers. We could not bring any roller bags or any kind of luggage. There's no
with
room.
you to the island. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I get it. They left it behind it.
Yeah, we left it on the bus.
Right. I got it.
So there he is. There's a study, Captain Ed English. Like many men of the sea, he is serious at work, salty at happy hour, and likely to be much wealthier than he appears here. We're on our bus now, long bus ride back to Deer Lake, nearly 300 miles in about 7 hours. So this is some joker from the back of the bus attempting to do stand-up comedy.
Oh, no.
Spiel went over like a lead balloon.
Tomatoes hurt.
But Francois came through for us one more time. He took us to the best overlook back at Gros Morne that he knew of. So this is our last stop in Gros Morne before we're heading back to the Deer Lake Motel. The next day would be quite an ordeal to get home, but you don't need to hear about that.
Always is.
So there we are. At the end here, we have Awesome Al, Ellen, Terry, Legrand Francois, Ken, Vicky, Papa Paul Shaw, Kathy and Dave, Professor Katie, Crazy Janie, Mighty Tiny Gail, and Lonesome Dave. Let's hear it for them all.
Last but not least.
Oh,
Wow.
and unless I forget, we actually there was a photographer. The photographer there was a KTA person on there who took many of these fine pictures who's not photographed there. Her name is Jen.
Cool.
Okay, we are done.
Yeah.
Oh, questions? Yes. Yes, questions.
Is there any food that's native to that country?
Any food.
Any food.
Was there
Seafood.
Fish.
Yeah, we were, we had some interesting things up at the lighthouse, Jerry, that, I'm not sure what the source of the origin of the food was. There was one night that was of seafood, and there were some other locally grown, unfamiliar turnipy things that we were served in those meals.
Yeah, it's mostly cod was the main fish. And yeah, it was like they're root vegetables, basically, is
Yeah,
what
that's
they
a good word.
served us. Salads were very few and far between. We really missed the whole green
Fresh
salad,
vegetable.
and fruits are
Very tough to get that.
very tough to get
Yeah.
there, because everything had to be flown in or shipped in. And, yeah.
You know, it was funny though, when we were shopping, because we were camping when we were there, so we always went to the grocery store and they had Driscoll's strawberries
Oh.
and blueberries.
Yeah.
I don't want
Driscoll's, yeah.
Yeah, they get all the way here.
Yeah, you pay for them, but they can be rough. We had interesting on the cod. From what I've read, the cod fishing went out there was a ban of cod fishing that was enacted in 1992,
Yeah.
and not only was it overfished for decades, but the methods of fishing had become so bottom heavy at that point that the seabeds were scraped, and they were so scraped that the cod industry and the cod fisheries collapsed. It has come back to some extent, by moratoriums on fishing, but it hasn't fully come back because the seabeds were so decimated ecologically that it's going to take decades if it ever comes back to that extent. So it's a lot. The cod's alive again, but it's not nearly what it had been.
There was a great little aquarium just south of Rocky Harbor there, that you could go in and see some of the reefs down there, and the reefs off the coast of Newfoundland are equivalent to anything you would see like in Florida or anything that's brilliant or colorful, multicolored fish down there. And they were really working on, revitalizing, like you said, they were preserving and reintroducing all these corals and restructured hundreds. You wouldn't think of it up there as having reefs, but those were the birthplaces of all the fish. Too.
It's a fascinating story. It's a fascinating place. You got to also understand, I really would have also encouraged everybody, not just to go up there and enjoy the sensational nature that's up there, but also just to try to understand the people and the culture and the history as much as you can.
Well, they were so, we have to know why, tribe and
We were in Twilling Gate for
well,
a
that
while.
was the first town there, that you were in.
Oh, that was.
We were
fun.
there during their Independence Day.
Yeah.
So there was cake and there were flags and everybody was so friendly, come and eat with us and have some cake. And then, later on, there was a national park ranger who was a native Mi'kmaq, for indigenous people, and he took us down the coast. We had a fire, we had a smudge burning, he talked about culture and Mi'kmaq and all that. And so there was so much of that history right there, just right in Gros Morne area. We spent a long time there, actually.
So Wells, did you feel like, have you seen Come From Away?
Oh,
No.
no, I haven't.
Oh, I was gonna ask you if you felt like you were,
No.
could relate after.
No,
being-
I certainly felt like I could relate to the shipping news, with where we were. But it was, it certainly whet my appetite to go, not only to go back to Newfoundland, but understand more of all of maritime Canada and even get over to Labrador.
Maybe you'll have to leave it.
Many indigenous people?
Yeah, a few. Yeah, you see a few. Yeah, they're around. They're not in tremendous numbers, but it's
We did read that
Yeah.
the AT does run off the western
All the way up.
finger all the way up to.
if that does, it's beyond my knowledge. Beyond my knowledge.
It's the only place that we took our bikes that year,
Big
and
mistake.
we ran into other people who were biking the whole west coast, and we thought, oh, that's really cool, this is a very bike-friendly place, and we biked one day, started going up the west coast, visiting a couple towns, turned around, came back. It was the only time in my life I actually had to pedal downhill into the wind. The wind is so strong going south and north, and we were just like,
Yeah.
Just trying to get
down the hill.
When he said biking, I think he said motorcyclists, and the motorcyclists really scared
Oh,
in
yeah.
that wind too. They thought they were gonna get blown off.
Well, hey, I think, if, I assume you will be sticking around and can answer.
I am sticking around.
Yeah.
If anybody has questions on our trip, Terry or I are pretty knowledgeable, I think, and
So was Jim and Lynn.
Anything you wanna know about?
I asked Jim and Lynn, they are debatably even more knowledgeable than I am, I don't know.
Got it all right here in this.
We
And-
didn't go to the
Would
same
you-
places you did.
Well, we went over to Quilling Gate, which is.
Yeah.
To see icebergs.
We did see.
Yeah,
So
so
that's
they
why
saw,
we
they
went
saw,
over.
They saw.
All the
More
good stuff.
more
And-
details coming.
They were stuck
And-
far north, they said, right? They weren't
and if
real bad.
anybody, and I do the other purpose of me being here, I have those books, if anybody.
That's right, do not forget, the book display is right here. But, before we, please join me in thanking Wells and Terry for opening. To tell you that next month, it's always on the third Wednesday of the month. Next month, Lisa Lombardo will be doing the program on hiking Provence, which was, an HS trip in May of 2024. Where they did a lot of hiking around Marseille and in Provence region of France. Sounds like very interesting. So hope you'll be here with us then. But now, before you go, you have to make sure and stop over and get yourself some good cake and cookies and goodies, because I don't want to have to
Don't
go
make
home.
Lynn take that
Yeah. Thank you for being with us, and we hope to see you again.
And thank you, Lenny, for having, arranging the program.
We saw moose coming in. More. We go past this camp.
I got it.
And it's just down there, down in that.
No. Not that we, because the people are so spread out, it's like, they're like, way ahead of me, you know, but, you know, we did, yeah. Yeah, well, But it was so.